What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolve video. Alright, so in today's video we're going to be talking about another one of the Idolmaster decks that came out in the starter package, and this one is featuring Mio Honda. And the deck that is featuring Mio Honda is the mid-range Passion. So what you're really going to be doing is handling your opponent's early game. You're going to be stopping all that stuff, removing their stuff off the board, and you're going to have kind of like a D-shift turn for this deck. You swing one time and then you play another card, and then you refresh everybody and then you swing again. But getting into the pros and cons of the deck, so the pros, we have control. It has a heavy late game, and then it has a pretty decent draw. Alright, so starting off with our first point, we have control. So there's going to be one thing we're going to be doing is stopping our opponent's game plan, especially if it's early game. We really need to stop our opponent's early game because that's where we're weakest. Alright, and then we have heavy late game, so of course we're going to have nice control and everything for the early game, but once we get past the early game control, or the mid-range control, whatever you want to call it, we're going to get them into a range where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to be putting down boss monsters now, so what's your answer to that? Alright, and lastly, we have decent draws. So of course, every time we play a card onto the field, it's going to be -1. But we do really enjoy it when we do play a card and then it's a cantrip and it replaces the card, and then it's even better if we do replace the card and then we also draw another card. And then moving on over into the cons, so we have the early game setup and board setup. Alright, so for the early game, of course, the one thing we're going to be lacking is early game followers, or any of our early game followers are going to have some impact on the game. We're going to be answering our opponents. Alright, so you're probably wondering why I have setup and board setup as two separate things. So for setup, of course, we're going to have to set up our big game play towards the end, and we're going to make sure we have the right numbers to kill our opponent. And then lastly, with board setup, for a couple of our legendaries, we need at least 3 cards onto the field, and if our opponent's playing some sort of removal, and then we only have 2, we're in a really awkward situation where it's like, okay, well, I now need to replace the card I just played, and then, play the other card so I can get the 3 Cinderella girls and stuff like that, and that can lead to awkward plays. Alright, and then we have our MVP of the deck that's going to be helping us play our cards, Aiko Takamori. So looking at the first two, Aiko Takamori, so we have the 3 cost, she's a 2/2, so you can evolve her for 1, but when she comes into play, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, you may reveal a passion card from among them and add it to your hand, with the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. And then when you evolve her, on evolve you may summon a passion follower that costs 3 or less from your hand. And then we have the 4 cost Aiko Takamori, which is a 4/4, but you can use her ability to engage 3 passion followers on a field, and you may summon a passion follower from your hand and give it at the start of your end phase, return this card to its owner's hand. So it's going to seem a little sucky that you're going to be engaging your passion followers instead of swinging with them to play other cards, but when we do play cards like that, when we already have 3 passion followers on the field, when we go into our next card, that's going to be cards that are going to be playing other cards from our deck. Alright, so here are some solid targets that you can get off of the Aiko Takamori. There are some situations where you might want to go for any of these. So we have Shinjuku Okawa, we have Yumi Aiba, we have Natalia, and then we have Risa Motoba. Alright, so looking at the first card, we have Shinjuku, so she's a 3 cost 2/5. When she comes in play, you give your leader +2 defense, and if there are at least 5 passion cards in your cemetery, you give 4 health instead. Alright, so personally for me, this is my favorite card of the set just because of the art itself, but it's nice to be playing a card for free and then be healing as well while you're doing it. Alright, and then next up we have Yumi Aiba, so she's a 3 cost 3/3. You can evolve for 1, and if there are at least 3 passion followers on your field, select the enemy follower on the field and deal it 2 damage. So there are going to be situations where we evolve Aiko and then want to be playing Yumi as well. Unfortunately, we can't evolve the same turn, but playing a card and then dealing 2 damage should go ahead and take care of a follower they might have established because they might be playing some sort of aggro is not too bad. And then we have Natalia, so she's a 2 cost 1/3, and she has Storm, so you select the enemy follower on the field and deal it damage equal to the number of other passion followers on your field. So yet again, it's just like Yumi Aiba in terms of dealing damage equal to the number of followers on the field. It just doesn't cap out at 2, so if you have at least 3 followers, you're going to be dealing 3 damage to a follower and then swinging in for 1 damage as well. Alright, then next up we have Risa Motoba, so she's a 3 cost 2/2, and you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may summon an Idolmaster Cinderella girls follower that costs 2 or less from among them and put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. Alright, so personally for me, Risa is more of a hot taker card. Don't take this card too much into consideration, but if you are running more lower cost cards like Natalia and stuff like that in our 1 cost, there's a potential that we are going to be hitting them off of the top 3 and then playing them, and then we have those 3 Cinderella girls, so we can go ahead and get into our Aiko Takamori play on turn 4. Alright, so let's talk about the kill combo for the deck. Alright, so we have our Mio Honda, she's a 6 cost 5/5, she has Rush, But when she comes into play, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck and you may summon a passion follower from among them and then you bury the rest. You can also activate for 2 play points and use 2 lesson cards to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, and you may summon a passion follower from among them and then bury the rest. So this is the card you're really going to want to be playing off of the Aiko Takamori ability, just so we can look at the top 2 cards and then we can summon any passion follower from among them, we play them and get their fanfare effects, and then so on. Alright, and next up we have Akane Hino. So she's an 8 cost 7/7. She has Storm, but when she comes into play you can use 3 lesson cards and discard 2 passion cards and deal 6 damage to each enemy follower on the field and then draw 2 cards. Alright, so if you manage to hit this card off of the Mio Honda, it is straight gas just because it is Storm, so you're going to be swinging for 7 as soon as it's played. When it comes into play you don't need to use its fanfare for any play points, you just use 3 lesson cards and you're going to be discarding 2 passion cards as well along with it to be dealing 6 damage to the board and then drawing 2 as well. Alright, and lastly we have Kiari Moroboshi. So she's a 9 cost 9/9, and this card costs 3 less to play if there's a 1 cost follower on your field, so she is ward, but when she's played you refresh each follower on your field. So if there's a scenario, of course, where we're going to be doing the Mio Honda Akane Hino play, of course the Mio Honda is going to go back to our hand, but our opponent's really going to have to focus on our board because we have a board full. And if they aren't able to get rid of our 7/7 because their next turn is going to be focusing on either killing us or getting through to our followers, which is really what's going to be happening if we're done our job in terms of control, they're going to try their best to deal with what they can, and then we're going to go for our Mio Honda play again, potentially hitting another Storm or something like that. Or if we're going to go for a big huge swing play, we play Kiari and then we refresh everybody and then we swing again. Alright, so let's talk about draw. Alright, so the draw for the deck is Sparkling Days, Rika Jogosaki, and then we have Mirai Akagi. So Sparkling Days is the 1 cost spell for this deck. You look at the top 2 cards of your deck, you may reveal a cool or a passion card from among them and add it to your hand. You put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. Alright, so this is going to be the premier spell card that we're going to be using in the deck. Just to go ahead and look at the top 2, any cards that we don't really need in whatever situation, we're going to keep that at the bottom of our deck or hopefully see it, but whatever cards we're going to need for our combo, we can go ahead and add to our hand. Alright, and next up we have Rika Jogosaki. So she's a 2/2, but on evolve you search your deck for a spell that costs 3 or less and reveal it and add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. So when evolving this card is going to be nice to deal with a follower on the field because this card will have rush and stuff like that since it's evolved, but we're going to be looking through our deck for spells that are either removal or to add more cards into our hands like Sparkling Days. Alright, and lastly we have Mirai Akagi. So she's a 3/3. So on evolve you discard a passion card and then you draw 2 cards. So I think this card is pretty decent just to go ahead and thin our deck out as best as possible. So we're going to go ahead and put a passion card into our cemetery. And it's going to be pretty nice putting a card in there because some card effects that we have are going to say, hey, you need at least 5 cards in your cemetery to do this. So this will help fuel that. Alright, so let's talk about removal. So we have Nagi Hisawaka, we have Center Street, we have Yumi Aiba, and then we have Yuzu Kitami. Alright, so looking at the Nagi Hisawaka, so she's a 4 cost 4/4. So when she comes into play, you banish 2 1 cost cards from your cemetery, choose up to 2 of the following. You can either 1 select enemy follower in the field and destroy it, 2 deal 2 damage to each enemy leader, or 3 draw a card and discard a card. So what we're really going to be using this card for especially is just to go ahead and have some hard removal onto the field, and it's pretty nice that Sparkling Days is a 1 cost spell card that we can just go ahead and banish those cards from our cemetery, and then we can go ahead and remove a card off the field. We have a 4/4, and then we can choose one of the other 2 effects. And then next up we have Center Street. So it's a 3 cost quick spell. So you select enemy follower on the field and deal it 5 damage, and if there's a passion follower on your field, you draw a card. So with the Rika effect, if we know our opponent's going to be playing some big boss monsters or something that's going to have at least 5 health in the very next turn, we can go ahead and set this up, leave her upright, and since we're playing a full passion deck, we're going to be using this as like a little witch bolt. And then next up we have Yumi Aiba. So on evolve you select the enemy follower with 3 defense or less on the field and you put it to the bottom of its owner's deck. So we have like a little Crystalia Lily effect. So if we're in the mid-range turn where opponent might be playing a follower that has at least, 3 defense or less, or we might be pinging our followers with our Angelic Snipe for the deck, it's gonna be nice to go ahead and putting them to the bottom of the deck. We don't have to worry about it, and then we can swing into another follower too. Alright, so lastly we have Yuzu Kitami. So she has ward. So on evolve you select the enemy follower that costs 2 or less on the field and return it to its owner's hand. You can also use 1 less and select another card that costs 1 or less on the field and return it to its owner's hand, and for the rest of the turn this card's activated abilities can't be activated. So it's going to be pretty nice if our opponent established some crazy aggro turns. It's going to suck that they're going to get their fanfare effects again, but establishing this ward is going to be nice as well. So I want to go ahead and give an honorable mention to our precious little devil, so our angelic snipe for the deck. So yes, it's going to be nice to go ahead and snipe something for 1, but the other effect of having at least 3 Cinderella girls on the field to deal 3 damage seems pretty impossible, or just feels badsy if you're going to try and deal something 3 damage and then, you know, you might have to put 2 cards in the field and then use this card. It's like, okay, well, I used 3 cards and I only dealt 3 damage to one thing. But in all honor, we are going to be just using it for an angelic snipe, so don't feel like this is a bad card to be using. Alright, so here are the early drops we're going to be playing in the early game if we don't have any plays like Sparkling Days and stuff like that. So these are going to be our 1-cost followers and then with the combo of Angelic Maid. Alright, so the first card we have is Kaoru Ryuzaki. She is a 1-cost 2/2. You can activate for 2 play points if there are at least 5 passion cards in your cemetery. Select a follower in your cemetery and add it to your hand. Activate only once per turn. So of course, if we're going to be putting cards into our cemetery from the top of our deck from other effects, it's going to be nice to be using Ryuzaki to go ahead and spend 2 play points to get them back if we're able to, and it's not bad to be playing this as a 1-cost 2/2. Alright, and then next up we have Yuzuki Tami. So she's a 1-cost 1/1. You can evolve her for 2, but she does have Ward. But you can also use 1 lesson to select another card that costs 1 or less from the field and return it to its owner's hand. For the rest of this turn, this card's activated abilities except Evolve can't be activated. So we're probably not really going to be using the activate ability to return a card to our hand unless we really need to, but the fact that we can use this as a ward and then evolving it for 2, like we looked at earlier, could go ahead and put a card back into our opponent's hand and then have a 2/2 ward isn't too bad. And then next up we have Angelic Maid. So it's a 2-cost quick spell. You can select a follower on your field. You give it +1 attack and +3 defense and your leader +3 defense. Alright, so if you have this combo in your hand, both the Yuzuki Tami and the Angelic Maid, I'd say 100% go for it because you're going to be establishing a 2/4 on turn 2 as early as that. And then having a ward as big as that and then also healing 3 because your opponent's obviously going to be swinging at you if they're doing some early aggression. I think that's just a crazy good combo. Just the bad thing about this card is it's a cute card and it's not a passion card, so it's going to be one of the one-off cards that you're not going to be wanting to use in your deck. Alright, so here is something to consider. Alright, so we have Shin Sato, so she's a 3-cost 3/3. You can evolve her for 6, but when she comes into play, you draw a card. And then when you evolve her, so on evolve, you select a follower that costs 8 or less in your cemetery, and then you summon it. Alright, so in most decks, we're going to want backup plans, and I think Shin Sato isn't that bad of a backup plan, especially if we're able to use our lesson cards for our Storm Follower, or if we manage to put a card from the top of our deck to our cemetery, and we're like, oh, okay, we hit one of our big drops, so when we get to turn 9, we can just go ahead and do this combo, replace the card, and we can play our 8 or less card from the field, and then we can go ahead and do their fanfare effects, and then get the game rolling. Alright, and we are finally at the grade of the deck, but if you already know how this series works, we're going to be looking at a sample deck list that I created for the deck. Alright, so here is a sample deck list that I want to go ahead and talk about and say that it's a template, so change things how you want to, of course. My feelings are not going to be hurt at all. I want you guys to have the best success that you can with this deck because I absolutely love Miyo Honda as an idol, and she's the only character that I really know from this series. Alright, but outside of that, I really do want to focus on the fact that we are running Shizuku in the deck. I think this is my favorite card. I don't care if anyone says that this card is bad. Just, you know, playing this card for free and then healing 2, or if you have at least 5 passion cards, which, you know, when we get later on in the game, is going to be nice to be healing 4, because there are some situations where healing is just better than, you know, drawing a card. But of course, we're going to be using our late game boss monsters too that we're going to be using as the 3 ofs, and then, you know, the 2 of the Mirai, because, you know, there's not every situation where we're going to be playing these 2 and then we hit that. But I think mostly I want to focus on was the Shizuku because you do heal 2 just for playing her off of the Aiko if you do hit her. Outside of that, you know, hitting the other 3-cost cards that we can play for free is not bad as well. I will be putting the deck code in the description below, so if you want to check this out for yourself and, you know, have a little template, for sure, I encourage you to 100% change this deck as you like it and change it to your playstyle so you can have some big success with it. Alright, so getting back into the grade of the deck, so what we learned about the deck is there are lots of removal for it, there's ways to draw, we have really nice combos in the deck if you really can pull them off, but hitting that late game really does feel nice when you hit the Miyokonda, so it kind of does feel a little gambly. It's like you're playing a little slot machine looking at the top 2, and then just playing whatever card that you need that has their fanfare effects. Alright, if I were to give this deck a grade, I would definitely give this deck a big old B+. It's pretty nice, it's pretty fun. I would say it's not super competitive, but if you're able to get every everything off as early as turn 4, it does feel very good. So it does kind of seem high-rolly in that sense too, but hitting everything as early as turn 4 means you have to have a perfect hand. Your opponent doesn't have to have any removal. They're going to make sure, hey, you know, I'm going to make sure you only have 2 cards on the field, so you can't get those 3 cards on the field to get your perfect effect. But there are situations where that can work. But alrighty soldiers, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. It means a lot to me that you are here watching. I appreciate all of you. I'm sorry that I'm putting these out a lot slower than I usually do. I think today I was planning on just going ahead and doing cute, but I really am passionate about the passion deck, no pun intended. I really enjoy Mio Hondo for what she is. She's like a big idol. I've seen her in a meme and I've just crackled up a couple times when I've seen her, but I think the crossover set is doing very well right now, and I'm very excited for set 7 in the future. But alrighty soldiers, be safe in whatever you do tonight, and be safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah, TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do.